Welcome to the UK Sports Chat podcast. In today's episode, we are talking all about compression. Joining us, we have Matt, who is brand manager for UK and Ireland from CEP. And CEP is the sports brand of Medi, who are headquartered in Germany. CEP offers a collection of shorts, tights, shirts, short socks, knee socks, and sleeves for running, biking, triathlon, football, and a whole host of other sports. Nina Linnitt has been a registered nurse for 30 years and has specialised in lymphoedema management since 1994. Nina has been clinical manager with Medi UK Ltd for 10 years, primarily focusing on evidence-based medicine for the best outcomes for patients with lymphoedema. Nina was involved in the British Lymphology Society since 1994 and actively so between 2011 and 2015 when she was vice chair and chair of the society. Hello to you both, Matt and Nina.
Morning, Joe.
Hi.
Hello both. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
So tell us about CEP and Medi, please.
Okay. Well, Medi is a global based company out of Bayreuth in Germany that specialises in manufacturing medical aids and treats patients in the medical world. And CEP is a brand of Medi that's specifically designed for the sports market and takes all its history, knowledge, and background from the research and development that Medi has done for the past 70 years almost. And obviously a global leader in the medical world. That's pretty experienced amount of knowledge that we can take to the sport and fitness markets.
Great. And so tell us about CEP as well then. So if that makes total sense for a medical brand like Medi to have compression garments. If I think back to the operations that I've had, you turn up at a hospital, you get given a gown with some ties on the back, some fetching paper pants to put on, and some usually some socks, some kind of compression wear, and the reason you'll be given from the nurses that's to stop you getting blood clots while you're lay in bed. So yeah, that makes sense for it to come from a company like Medi. So what is compression? Tell us, what exactly is it?
So compression is required, exactly as you say, to keep the blood flow healthy and active, especially when you're inactive in a hospital environment or surgical environment. And you do need a very defined, graduated compression so that you're not creating a tourniquet in any area, which would create a backflow. That kind of extends into the world of medicine as well, where you have people that have venous disease, varicose veins, for instance. When you're standing up, the pressure in your ankle is far greater than when you're laying down, and venous disease can develop over time with familial disease or with having a DVT or having a wound on your leg. It can damage the venous valves, and so therefore compression is required to keep that venous return active and prevent further complications down the line.
Okay, so that's a very excuse my non-medical vocabulary. It's a very medicalized answer for that. So why does that transfer into the sporting world and for people who are running, triathlon, cycling?
In relation to the medical technology, I think the key elements for compression are increase in circulation, obviously, stabilization, recovery, and it's all about taking oxygenated blood back to muscles to effectively feed muscles so that you can exercise for longer, recover more quickly, because the venous system and the arterial system take blood away from the heart and return blood to the heart to ensure that you oxygenate muscles, which is actually what's required to exercise, to run, through everyday life. So effectively, what compression does, it helps the body do what it does naturally in a more efficient way. So that's the important part, and Nina mentioned, is having correct profiling, correct product that fits properly, but also product that's manufactured correctly to ensure that it's graduated compression that is actually aiding the body do what it does naturally. So it's increasing oxygenated blood to the muscles and increasing that flow, and obviously then taking deoxygenated blood back away from the muscle to get back to the heart to reoxygenate. And the closest thing that sort of we talk to people about in relation that most people will understand this is when you jump on an aeroplane and people talk about DVT, and ensuring that you sort of pump your calves, you move your foot up and down. And what you're doing there is actually accelerating the way that blood flows in your lower limbs back to your heart. So the hardest thing to do with blood to get that reoxygenation to happen is to fight gravity. So compression works in the same way as, and in layman's terms, again, when you water the garden, if you don't have one of these special guns on the end of the hose, you actually squeeze the end of the hose pipe, and what you're doing is actually compressing that to increase the pressure through the end of the hose pipe. And compression works in a very similar way, as long as it's true compression in terms of graduated and applying the right pressure at the right stages of each product.
Okay, so to just talk to us more then about what is that true compression then, and what does that mean to the sports people here who are listening to the podcast?
Compression is, I guess, what we're here to do today is to help people understand more about compression and how they can use that within their toolbox for running. And compression isn't like a light switch where you put it on and you can forget about stretching, you can forget about warming up, you can forget about hydration. It's part of a toolbox. So ultimately, it's about measuring your limbs where you want the compression to have an effect so that you're actually sized properly. Because Nina mentioned earlier as well that if something's too tight, you can actually create a tourniquet, which can slow down venous return and have an adverse effect. So we measure people at various different areas above the ankle, on the calf, midpoint of the thigh, to ensure that there's graduated pressure and correct pressure in which is measured in milligrams of mercury, to ensure that you're aiding that venous flow in the right direction.
Okay, so it sounds like that measurement is really important.
Yeah, I think there's lots of brands and lots of products in the market that use the word compression, but the key to getting true compression is that you are measured correctly, because you can get a cyclist who's very, very lean, very, very strong venous system, and you see the guys cycling the Tour de France, huge veins popping out of calves and thigh muscles. They're the types of guys that have got very, very strong veins, but very, very slim legs. But then you might have a sprint cyclist on the track who's very, very different. They could be the same height, they could have the same leg length, but they need different thickness or circumference of product to ensure they get correct pressure. At the very, very elite end of sport, these guys, in compression is for all levels, because we all know about DOMs, and you train one day, or you sign up to do a marathon and you do your first run, or you sign up to do a sportive and you do your first bike ride. The day or the day after, wow, we become very, very stiff and it hurts. So again, in recovery profile of compression, that can aid you in terms of using the compression to help flush out the lymphatic system and the lactic acid that builds up and aids recovery. And that's why it's important to ensure that when you look at compression, that you look at recovery products for recovery or active products for active activity.
So what's the difference between those two then?
There's a couple in the sports category, in the sports world. There's a different profile. So we would measure a different point on the leg for a recovery product to active running product, because as Nina mentioned, when you're lying down or standing up, there's different levels of pressure. So there's different levels of milligrams of mercury required based on inactive recovery, sitting or traveling, versus actively running, and you will create an element of calf pump or muscle pump when you're running or exercising, and therefore there's a different profile required for active compression. From a medical perspective, I know there's, within people who exercise, there are people who may have clinical diagnosis of certain ailments such as varicose veins, etc. And Nina may be able to talk about more in terms of different levels of compression, and that's graded in different classes, and that's very important as well. That I know, looking at I'm talking to you via different social channels, there's a lot of people who talk about varicose veins and various other things. And it's very important to get clinical diagnosis, that if you are suffering with any issues in that area, that you get diagnosed properly. And then if you're using compression, you can then ensure that the compression that you're using is correct for you. Because, bringing Nina in, there is a disadvantage to having ill-fitting compression.
Yeah, definitely. Different stages of disease need different strengths of millimeters of mercury.
Okay. So what about? So you mentioned that this is for all levels. So what about for those people out there now who don't have any kind of varicose veins, don't have any of these kind of diseases? Is it for everyone at all levels? Is it for that person who's just starting off on their first 5K, or is this targeted for somebody more like your serious cyclist and your long distance runners who should be having compression, whether it be active or recovery, as part of their toolbox, in your opinions?
I think compression is for everybody, effectively, because whether you're a new starter or a seasoned runner or seasoned cyclist, there's definite benefits of reoxygenating your muscles to recover for your next ride. And I think lots of people get into running and really, really love it from a health and well-being perspective. You look at what parkrun do with families. Running and cycling and physical activity is a huge benefit across everybody's lifestyle. Everybody's fitter, everybody's healthier, and ultimately, compression is a day-to-day product that can help you enjoy that. If you're stood on your feet all day in work, or if and you've trained in the morning and you want to train again in the afternoon or the next day, compression from a recovery element can help you. And the where compression starts, people who are stood on their feet all day, the first thing they do when they get home is they kick their shoes off and say, wow, my feet are aching. And that's part of pooling. It's blood pooling, where your blood is fighting the gravity to get away. And that's why your feet swell on aeroplanes, or they swell when you're on your feet all day. So, more active people, there's definitely benefits, but it's definitely part of a toolbox, and it's not just a one fix. So it goes in line with your recovery, your stretching, your nutrition, your hydration, ice baths, all that side of things. That definitely, I know if I signed up for a marathon or a sportive and not done anything in a while, 2 days after that first ride, I'm going to be really, really stiff and walking around as if I've been riding on a horse for 30 days on the trot. So we all know what DOMS feels like, and it's not nice. and they're using true compression and compression that is the right profile is definitely of benefit to everybody.
Okay, so if you're using I'm just trying to differentiate between the two different products. If I'm using the active products, that should that be helping me have less DOMS after?
It will do, because there's an element of increase in blood flow whilst exercising. So effectively, that you're doing it. You're increasing and aiding what your body does naturally while you're running, and then alternatively, if you think about driving to a race or driving to an event, it's pre-recovery as well as recovery. So there's an element of, you can use your recovery product on the way to an event. change into your active socks, which have other benefits on top of the compression in terms of blister free, comfort. And various other things, but then after your race, you take your race socks off. If you're then jumping back in a car or walking home, the recovery product can almost help you straight away. And there's an also we also recommend that you don't overwear product as well, because the body can adapt to wearing compression for too long. And
Okay.
what we say is, optimal time is 2 to 4 hours after a race, and then take it off, because you don't want your body to become almost reliant on that. And also, it can adapt to reducing the effects if it's worn for too long, because naturally your body's venous system will let the blood travel around the body. So, there is obviously that ability to use compression and then take compression off and not overuse it as well.
That is reflected in some of the comments that we've seen when you were hosting, co-hosting the UK Run Chat Hour. That the market seems to be that people either love it and they swear by it and they wear it all the time, or they're very skeptical.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think there's a mixed message in the market, and lots of products and in the market use compression and maybe overuse the word compression. I think, and that's key to what we discussed earlier, is understanding the difference between a compression run type that may use the word compression but is tight lycra based on a small, medium, large, or extra large in sizing, versus a true compression garment, which is you've been measured for a specific targeted compression in a specific area. So, and again, it's using the compression properly and understanding when to wear a recovery product versus an active product. A pair of running tights that say they're compression running tights should potentially not be worn as a recovery item.
Somebody who's never had compression before, then,
Yeah.
when do they start wearing a compression garment? What's the trigger? When would they, and why would they?
Well, I think ultimately, I think when somebody starts running or starts cycling, and if we talk about running, because the first thing they go in and buy is a pair of running shoes, because that's the ultimate item that you need. Yeah. The next most important item really is your socks, so that you're blister free, you've got comfortable fit within your shoes. Not everybody wears long socks, and CEP specifically, the compression element of the sock starts in the midsole, and that's where compression really should start, because your feet have a venous structure in them as well. And ultimately, that's the next item that people should be considering. So it's ultimate fit, performance, recovery, and blister-free technology that people, to get the perfect fit for the shoe is really important. And so realistically, from day one, it's a consideration, and then obviously that goes into what you wear and what you eat or how you hydrate. So again, I go back to the point: it's part of a toolbox of understanding how all these elements can work together.
We've mentioned about the specific measurements a couple of times now. So how do people go about that?
You measure this, yeah. So if I talk about the difference between a recovery sock measurement versus an active running sock, we would take a measurement of just 2 fingers above the ankle bone, around the ankle of the circumference, and for a recovery sock, and then for a run sock, we'd take a measurement of the midpoint of the widest point of the calf. That then reflects into a size category, which will tell you what size of product is required to give you optimal compression for each of those products effectively.
Okay. So I'm thinking about, if I go into a retail store, is there some education that's need doing, throughout shops and stores and just with people who are actually selling these products? Because hand on heart, I've never seen anybody having their calf measured in a store.
Yeah, there is, and I think in sports in the sports world or sports apparel, there's no regulation in terms of how you're educated to measure for certain garments, whereas in sports nutrition there is, because we ingest that product. And I think that using and understanding true compression should be a little bit like, okay, well, what am I going to eat and drink? Is that the right product? How's that going to affect my body when I eat that? And within that, the Food Standards Agency governs that sector. Excuse me. In the compression world, I think that there should be an education in terms of stores and staff to actually advise people that if they are wearing a garment that can restrict blood flow and can have an adverse effect, that these guys need to give and understand, what true compression is and how that should be worn and used. And in the medical world, we have to do that with regards to Medi, and that's how we want to help people understand that. From a CEP perspective, not everyone will buy CEP, but ultimately, when you buy any product, it's understanding is that product fit for purpose, and what the Medi world and where Nina specialises is, that's vitally important, because we cannot deliver product into the medical world and not give what's required in that market, and that's the mantra that we take across into the CEP world effectively.
Yeah. Okay. And just to bring Nina back in, so there was we had a question, didn't we, from a community member who had mentioned that they do suffer with varicose veins. So how would that work, Nina? Would they be looking at a CEP product, or is this something more specific if somebody does have things like varicose veins and they're very sporty?
I think if they have a clinical diagnosis and they suffer, they have problems linked to varicose veins, then they would be in a medical device, so a Medi garment, for instance, which gives the correct profile for their condition, and it is compression, so they're safe to exercise in it. In fact, we always advise that even if you don't want to wear your garment on a daily basis, they should be wearing it when they exercise, because that's the point where you develop your circulation is being kind of improved, and so therefore you're going to get more fluid pushed into the lymphatic areas, in the tissue spaces, and so you need that medical compression then to get everything moving in the right direction. So it is just that there is always that question, well, I've got this condition, but I want to use CEP. CEP may well be okay for them for running in the short term, but we talked earlier about the different levels of compression. So if they need something that's very high in millimeters of mercury, CEP isn't going to give them that. So it's that balance of using something that they feel comfortable with, but that is actually also giving them the medical treatment that they need.
Okay. Can you explain what the milligrams of mercury and what all that means, please, for us?
Yeah, it's because we've got this internal pressure in our ankle when we're standing. If it becomes very high because, say, there's a pooling of blood, you need to have a good squeeze on the outside of the limb to push the fluid back into the body, back where it needs to be, so returning that circulation. And so the millimeters of mercury is a little bit like when you have your blood pressure taken and they pump it up. That's exerting a certain amount of squeeze on your arm, and that's the millimeters of mercury. So you can have in mild conditions, so if it's a very early diagnosis of venous disease, for instance, then you would have a low millimeters of mercury. So that squeeze would be around 20 millimeters of mercury. So it's a very light compression garment. Whereas if you've got very severe disease and you have lots of pain and, maybe you're waiting for surgery, you would need much more than 20. You'd need maybe 35 to 40 millimeters of mercury. So it's descriptive of the amount of squeeze that you need on your limb to correct the problem, the underlying disease.
Okay. So if I'm a regular runner or cyclist, and I do have a diagnosis of some sort, who do I go to? Is that a GP or a physio, or who would help with that?
Yeah, well, the diagnosis needs to come from the GP or a specialist, really.
Sorry, my question is who would then recommend what sock, and is that something that a GP would do, or is that
hospital specialist or GP, practice nurse. If there's a condition diagnosed, then they're the people that tell you what kind of compression level is required.
So we had some questions through Twitter from some of the community members. So I'm just going to fire those over, and if either of you want to just jump in on them. So from @Scrain __ @Scrain, we had, I'd be interested to know how important running with compression is to performance. I do run with compression socks as I have circulation issues, but just wondered what the research says.
Yeah. I think ultimately this links back to the research of over 65 to 70 years of treating vascular issues within the Medi world. And I think compression is important, but again, it's important within the toolbox. Serious amateur runners, and I think a lot of people get into new sports and they love them. And it's like it goes from once a week to 3 times a week to 7 days a week to sometimes 14 times a week, where they're training twice a day. So ultimately, increasing venous return and reoxygenating your muscles, both in active and recovery elements, will definitely help you recover more quickly, reoxygenate your blood, which enables you to train longer for harder, but not withstanding that all other elements need to be taken into consideration. Good sleep, good hydration, good rest. Too much of everything is not good for you, but moderation and using the right tools within that toolbox, and that really can help.
Next one was from @Runner Constant. After a run, is it better to take the compression socks off or keep them on for a while?
Again, using the right compression whilst running versus recovering. Whether you can get your socks off straight after the run is the big question, how far you've run. But ultimately, yes, is to, if you want to recover and to, recover well and recover at the optimum levels, if you like, whilst using compression, obviously drinking water, stretching, cup of tea, whatever is your recovery method, but compression can help with the right profile in terms of using recovery product for a period of time. And we say normally 2 to 4 hours afterwards, put them on. If you're traveling in the car, it will help. If you're jumping on an aeroplane, recovery profile product can help as well. So it's using it for a period of time afterwards, and then take it off, and then use it again the next day. Pre and post race, pre-recovery and recovery.
Mel at the real Mel Heel asked, what is the best starter item to buy? I think you touched on this before, but what's the best starter item to buy if you want to try it out before investing in a lot of different gear?
Well, CEP, we offer a 30-day performance guarantee, so you can try any of our product for 30 days with a money-back guarantee. And I think the most important thing is when you start using a product is to ensure that it's comfortable, it fits well, and you like it. And one of the major concerns that most runners have is finding a product that, a sock that doesn't give you blisters or creates blisters. And we're very happy that we claim that there's blister-free running with our product. So any product from CEP in our sock range is definitely ideal for starting out, but finding that nice, comfortable fit with your running shoes is vitally important, and we do give a 30-day performance guarantee on that.
I'm sure people don't know that. So,
No,
so to summarise the benefits then of the active products,
yeah.
the recovery products, just one more time for our listeners.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah, the sort of top line benefits of compression is increased circulation, stabilizations of for joints and muscles, and an increased accelerated removal of metabolic waste, so a recovery element or pre-recovery element within the products.
Okay. So just I don't know if there's been any studies done by Medi or anything like that, but is there a typical time, or how much quicker will it help you recover?
I guess that depends on how it's used and within the toolbox. So it depends on, how you sleep, how you hydrate, and how you stretch as well. Again, it's not a one trick pony, if you like, that you can put compression on and forget about everything else. So it's how you integrate that into your toolbox for training or running or cycling or fitness training. So it's I don't think there's a test that can tell you how quickly it can help you, because everybody's different in effect. But obviously, the sooner you can increase your venous return, that means you're going to be recovering more quickly.
Well, thank you very much to both of you for joining us. I think if anyone listening out there has got any more comments or other questions, then they'll be able to ask it through our social channels, and that we'll be on hand to answer things through social media, and it'd be good to have you back on again to answer any specifics from people in the community.
Yeah, definitely. We want to help people understand how to use compression more efficiently, but understand how they should buy compression correctly as well, to ensure that they're, we'll take away the ambiguity of does compression work or doesn't it work, and we'd only be happy to answer and work with you guys to help the community understand and learn more.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, Matt. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.